Buenos días y bienvenidos.
Good
It is good to be together today,
Yes.
right? And
Yes,
there's
it
already been a miracle here this morning, which you can't see, but there was about a ½ inch of water through the kitchen and the sanctuary at 6 a.m. this morning. But staff and senior staff and volunteers rallied, and we're going to worship like nobody's business today.
Yep. Good morning and welcome. My name is Babs. My pronouns are they, them, and I am overflowing with joy that I get to be your worship associate today. On behalf of the entire congregation, we welcome you to our worship service this morning.
Part of resilience is being able to use humor, and Tim Atkins, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, when we had our worship huddle this morning, helped us remember to approach the river flowing in our souls today with humor. I am the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. My pronouns are she, ella, and I am one of your ministers. Reverend Abi Janamanchi, our senior minister, has been in Japan for the past 10 days. And he was with the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Susan Frederick Gray. He hoped to be here today, but a flight issue prevented his returning in time. But he did write a prayer for us that we're going to get to hear later today. Our words of welcome are filled with our deepest aspirations and call us to embody beloved community as we say, you are welcome here. Whether you are joining us for the first time or you've been a member since our founding in 1951, you are welcome here. Whoever you are, whomever you love, you are welcome here. Whatever your gender identity, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here. However you arrived at this beloved place, in person, online, with an oar, or by bicycle. You are welcome here.
I just got the oar button. If you're joining us for the first time today, please raise your hand if you're so comfortable and willing to do so. So our greeters can offer you a welcome gift. And with that welcome gift, you will also find a brochure that talks about Cedar Lane and also provides a safe place for you to share your information with us. Let us offer our guest a warm Cedar Lane welcome. Yay.
This week was the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters.
Woo!
One of my first weeks here, serving as your assistant minister then, I was called to do a prayer in English and Spanish in front of the White House for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee representing the UUA. And I remember looking out at that fence where the women who fought for my right to vote were spat upon and abused horribly. And I remember thinking, what a privilege it was to have the life that I have now and what has been laid down for me so that I might have rights, so that we all might have rights and live differently. And also, what a wonder it is to be a part of this congregation because we are boots on the ground for the UUA in DC. And I'd like to ask you what your legacy of justice will be. Our order of celebration, right next to it in the back, is announcements that talk about the many rich ministries that happen at Cedar Lane throughout the week, and I encourage you to engage with them and create your own legacy. And also to come to the concert tonight. There are great flyers that you can share with friends. 4 p.m. right here. Let us celebrate with music.
Yes. And if you have been attending for a while and you are interested in being a member, contact the Reverend Katie after services.
Our pastoral visitor today is Helen Pakacek, and Helen's available throughout the service to help you if there's a joy or a sorrow on your heart. And instead of greeting our neighbors today at this moment in our service, we are going to invite you At the end of service, after the postlude, to greet someone, introduce yourself to someone you don't know, and make a friend when you are out in the lounge. That was exquisite and extraordinary. Let us continue to turn our hearts to the service with the words of the Reverend Susan Manker Seal. We speak to the God, the Goddess, the Spirit of life, the eternal. We speak to the mysterious thread that connects us to the other and to the universe. We speak to the deep wisdom at the center of our beings. We embody the yearning of all people to touch each other more deeply, to hear each other more keenly, to see each other's joys and sorrows as our own, and know that we are not alone unless we create solitude for ourselves, and even then, community awaits us. Out of our yearning, we've come to this religious community. May we help each other to proclaim the possibilities we seek, to create the community we desire, to worship what is worthy in our lives, to teach truth as we know it, and to serve with justice in all the ways that we can, to the end that our yearning is assuaged and our lives fulfilled in one another. Come, let us worship.
Well, that was a splashing good time. As John Woodward comes up to chalice, kindle a chalice, symbol of our faith and gathered community, please rise in body and on spirit, and share in unison the chalice lighting on the words on the screen. We are all flames when we gather hand in hand. Our church, our community, our home, we inspire, we celebrate, we come together, sharing our light of hope for our shared future.
A long time ago, there lived in India a wise woman named Gita. One spring day, Gita went for a walk.
What a lovely sunny day it is today.
She thought to herself. On her walk, she noticed that there were people in the fields planting vegetables and fruit trees. As she passed by a pretty little house, she saw an old man planting a tree.
Why would such an old man be planting a tree?
She wondered.
It takes a very long time for fruit trees to grow, and planting is hard work. We might not even be around when the tree is big enough to give fruit.
Well, Gita went up to him and said,
Excuse me, sir, but what kind of tree are you planting?
This sapling is a mango tree,
said the man.
I love to eat mangoes. In about 20 years, this tree will produce mangoes good enough for eating.
Do you think that you'll be here in 20 years and be able to eat the mango fruit?
Asked Gita. The man looked surprised.
Oh, no. But I remember seeing a mango trees growing up when I was a little boy. I ate some of those mangoes in the summer. They were so delicious. Those mango trees were planted by those who wanted to leave a gift for younger people. I am planting this tree as a gift for the people who will be living 20 years from now. Then they can enjoy eating mangoes in the summer too. Just as my parents and grandparents planted trees for me, so I plant trees for my children and my grandchildren.
That's a wonderful thing to do,
said Gita, and she continued her walk. After a short time, she began to feel pretty tired.
I'll just rest for a few moments,
she thought as she sat down on the ground.
Maybe I'll close my eyes for a while. I'll eat my lunch when I wake up.
So Gita stretched out on the ground, closed her eyes, and fell into a deep sleep. Well, while she slept, a wonderful, maybe strange sounding, but a wonderful thing happened. An anthill appeared nearby. Now, this anthill grew bigger, and after a while, it began to surround Gita. Then it grew into the shape of a tent with Gita inside. The tent protected her from the wind, from the rain, from the cold, and from the hot sun. Gita slept very comfortably inside the tent. She slept on and on for a very long time. She slept for 20 years. Who would not mind sleeping for 20 years right now, right? I mean, one day, the anthill that covered Gita began to shrink. It grew smaller and smaller until it did not cover her anymore. Gita woke up. She looked around, she stretched and yawned.
What a good nap I had,
said Gita.
I must have slept a long time.
So Gita noticed a man picking mangoes from a tree nearby. Now this man was not the one to whom Gita had spoken with earlier. Gita stood up and walked over to the man.
Did you plant this tree?
No, answered the man. My grandfather planted it 20 years ago.
I can't believe it,
Gita said to herself.
I must have been sleeping for 20 years.
I'm going to plant a mango tree also, said the man. See, I have a sapling all ready to plant. Someday my children and grandchildren will be able to enjoy mangoes just as I do. And then Gita remembered the words of the old man.
Just as my parents and grandparents planted trees for me, so do I plant trees for my children and grandchildren.
The end.
Up the end.
What seeds will you plant for others to enjoy? What seeds will you nurture for future generations? What are the dreams of your heart that you can plant and share with these generations? In a moment, we're going to share a special seed with each of you from the Lunaria plant, sometimes called the money tree. This plant blooms with lavender clusters of flowers and makes silvery, white, flat seed pods that look like silver dollars. It's the magic of nature embodied. I invite you to plant this seed, to nurture it into being, and then share it with someone from a different generation for them to enjoy. In a moment, I'm going to make my way forward to just in front of the stand by the choir, and our Director of Lifespan Education, Tim Atkins, will come to the left-hand side of the sanctuary, and we'll invite you to come forward and take a seed. With this blessing, may this seed yield dreams that nurture generations to come, and know that Babs will also be circulating throughout the congregation for anyone who remains seated. We invite you to rise in body or spirit to receive your seeds. If you haven't already. May this seed yield dreams. May this seed, it's a seed for you to plant.
Oh, please.
Yeah. And you may come forward, and if you come down the aisle this way, then you'll be able to circle back to your seats. May this seed bring you joy. May this seed bring you joy. May it bring you joy. May it bring you joy. May this seed embody your dreams. May this seed embody your dreams. May this seed embody. You to rise in body or spirit as we sing together hymn number 207 in our gray hymnals, Earth Was Given as a Garden. We gather each week, not for our needs alone, but to bear witness to our joys and triumphs, our sorrows and our disappointments. In this circle of care, we make space for life's complexities, the many experiences that both bless and break our hearts. We come together to serve as companions on life's journey. When I hold up my arms, I invite you to say with me, we hold you in our hearts. If you are living through the small and extraordinary milestones of life, we hold you in our hearts. If you are mourning a loss, if you live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain, we hold you in our hearts. If you are struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illnesses or addictions, we hold you in our hearts. If you have suffered abuse or injustice, if you are a survivor, we hold you in our hearts. Within our Cedar Lane community, we continue to hold Leslie Backus and Greg Cassidy in our hearts as Leslie continues to recover from an illness. Leslie and Greg, we hold you in our hearts. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to all those whose lives are lost or impacted by calamities and violence in our world. Let us know that we are all connected, friends we have met and friends we have yet to meet across the world, heart to heart, through time and space. And may all those who are suffering know that we hold you in our hearts. As we enter a time of silence together, I invite those who are grieving a loss or commemorating an anniversary of a loss to rise in body or spirit, mourning or memory, as we hold the silence together. I share with you this prayer from the Reverend John Amanchi. Spirit of our hearts and minds, we pause for a few moments in the midst of our religious community, in this sanctuary of beauty and serenity and peace. We pause in quiet reflection and prayer. We bring to this time and this place our cares and concerns and offer our blessings with the full knowledge of their frailty and strength. We reflect upon the stirrings of our hearts, thankful for the love we receive, glad for the love we may offer. May we thoughtfully attend to whatever deep yearnings we feel, and may we know the grace and strength that grows as a broken heart is mended. Sometimes, O Spirit, we are really a mess, but as you know, we are really a wonder too. We give thanks for those times when we know this moment deeply, when we look at all the life around us and for a brief, fleeting, eternal moment, touch the holy that is within and among each of us. Touch now the quiet places in our souls, the places of secret pain, the places of secret joy. Touch those for whom we pray and who pray for us. And in the silence of these moments, speak to our secret needs. And I invite you to share those needs into this silence. For the needs spoken and remaining in our hearts, we pray. May all that is creative and life-giving find us eager to receive it, that our lives together may be grace-filled, our thoughts more wide, our actions more loving, and as we struggle alone and together in our common humanity, blessed be. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together hymn number 1021, Lean on Me.
Well, we moved about a year and a half ago, and Regina was pregnant, and it was really important to us to find a place that we can envision our little son Cal growing up, and we found that Cedar Lane couldn't possibly be better, just for its inclusion, its acceptance. No matter who you are, you can be here and feel like you're yourself, and that's really important to us. It's definitely a lesson that I think we want Cal to have. So it's a really good fit for us for that reason, I think.
And we also got the chance to find out how important it is to have a community like this in the difficult moments. Because when Cal was born, I was in the hospital for a while. And when things were not going well, Reverend Katie was there. And then when we got home, the members of the choir and the book club were there with meals for us. So that really meant a lot. Feels like home.
Yeah.
Hi, I came to Cedar Lane after attending some Wednesday morning moms groups and wanted a place for my kids. And as my kids aged, I realized it became more of a place just for me. I have found my community, I have found a place for my spiritual growth, I have found a place that supports me in being the person I want to be. There's many, many times during the course of a day where something will be brought to my attention and I go back to something Abi has said or something someone at the church has said, and I find that it's just the place that's helped me be the person I want to be.
What brought my family to Cedar Lane initially was the RE religious education program. And watching my kids grow up in that program has cemented even further the idea that this is our religious and spiritual home. Because the people that they're growing into, they are more caring, open, tolerant than I was at that age. And it's a program that thrives off of what Cedar Lane's members do. The time that they put in, the money that they give to support the ministry, to support the materials. Everything that the program does comes from us, and so my wife and I contributing to that has brought us further into the Cedar Lane family, so that's what makes this where we like to be.
What does it mean to grow like a seed? When I think of growth, I think of two types of growth: growing deeper and growing bigger. Where growing deeper is why we have a religious education program. We help children, youth, parents, families, adults, everyone grow just a little bit deeper. We see it every week in every adult class. Folks of all ages get deep here. And we are proud to not have registration costs for our children and youth RE program. And how can we do that? Because we are supported through your pledges and your plate offerings. So we're also growing bigger in the RE program too. I'm happy to say that for the first time since 2012, there's been a year-to-year net increase in the RE registrations at Cedar Lane. And just for example, our nursery is seeing numbers like we've never seen before at both services. Last week, there were a total of 18 kids in the nursery between the two services. We're not only growing deeper and bigger, we're growing younger too. And this growth is only possible due to your pledges and plate offerings. So today, I'm especially thinking about our RE program spaces. As you heard, there was a flood overnight. It may not look too bad up here, but water likes to go down. And the flood has damaged some of our classroom spaces, to be sure, but what hasn't flooded away is our commitment to our children and youth. What hasn't flooded away is our commitment to religious education for all ages. And what hasn't flooded away is our growth, all kinds of growth. So today, in the spirit of growth from growing deeper, wider, and younger, our offering will now be given and gratefully received.
In the words of Reverend Lynn Unger, though the work of our hands and the work of our lives, our love is made real. May we be grateful for all that we bring and share to make love real at Cedar Lane.
Thank you, choir, Henry, Jasmine. Thank you for reminding us to make a place for joy, which is an essential component in dreaming and in creating resilience. So I have a story for you. A man walks into a bank, and he's got a check with some modest lotto winnings, and he's excited. He tells the teller, and he asks for his money. And the teller says, well, you have to put your name to the check. You've got to sign it, you've got to pass it under the glass, and then I can give you the money. And he says, I'm not going to do that. If I put my name on it, you could take the check, and then I never get my money. What, are you kidding? And they go back and forth, and a manager's called, and they just keep telling him, got to put your name to it, you got to sign it, you got to pass it through the glass, and then you get your money. So finally, he says, I'm going to go to another bank. So he goes to the next bank. And in the next bank, the teller says, you got to put your name to it, you got to sign the check, put it through the glass, and then you get your money. And he says, but if I do that, you could keep the check and I don't get my money. And on he goes. 9 or 10 banks later, he finally gets this one exasperated teller who's about had it. After multiple times of saying, you got to put your name to it, you got to sign it, you got to pass it through the glass, and then I'll give you the money. So frustrated is this teller that they pull out one of those styrofoam noodles, and the teller goes, bunk! Put your name on the check, put it through the glass, I'm going to give you the money. So he signs the check, puts it under the glass, and he gets his money. Then he goes back to the first teller and says, look at what I got. I got my money. And the teller said, well, I bet you had to put your name on that check, sign it, pass it through the glass, and that's how you got your money. And he said, yeah, but nobody quite explained it like that to me before. One of my mentors, the Reverend Mary Morrissey, taught me that story. Mary has built multiple multi-million-dollar enterprises, including 2 megachurches. She's written 2 best-selling books, worked side by side with Nelson Mandela and His Holiness the Dalai Lama for several years, engaging in international peace talks, and she's addressed the UN and so much more. Part of her body of work is what she calls dream building, which is a technology that works for individuals as well as companies and organizations. We're going to talk about some of the steps today. There are 12 of them, and while we won't have time to go into all of them in depth, I want you to know about them. And I recognize that you may have heard some of these steps before in different ways, but I hope that no one has quite explained them like this before. The first step is defining your dream. It's casting a vision. It's deciding where you want to go. The Reverend Shel Redfern once told a story about how she and her husband, after years of barely scraping to get by, found themselves on a trip in Wisconsin, and they were in this parking lot just sitting in their car because they had money and they had transportation, but they had no idea what they wanted to do. So there they sat in the parking lot. And they started to talk to each other and vision about what they might like to do, and through the grace of the holy Google, found what was near them that was like their dream, and then they got out of that parking lot. That's why we need visions. If we don't know where we want to go, we never get out of the parking lot. Now, a vision, according to Mary, should have some good in it for others. And it should cover 4 main areas of living: health, relationships, work, and financial well-being. Cedar Lane has a vision and mission. It rose up through Vision 2020, and I'm hoping some of you can say it with me. Cedar Lane, Unitarian Universalist Church, is a community where love works. Together, we explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. Together, we dare to embody beloved community. Now let's test this dream. Step 2. When we test this dream, we look to see not if we are worthy of it, but if it is worthy of us. And if it isn't, we can choose to change or expand our dream. We need to first give it details, make it richer, more vibrant, more alive for us. Now, Mary tells a story of someone that she used to work with who had zero business experience but dreamt of owning a bed and breakfast. So Mary invited this woman to think in detail about the rooms of the bed and breakfast. And this woman could tell Mary about the crumbs of scone on the plates, about the conversations that were had in the Thoreau and the Emerson rooms, some of our Unitarian transcendentalist ancestors. And this woman continued to vision and, in spite of circumstances, proceed forward until she got the loan she needed, and that bed and breakfast is still running on the West Coast. But let's test our vision of exploring the eternal, nurturing community and building a just world. Does it speak to love and hope and goodness for others? Yes. Is it bold and exciting? Yes. Is it worthy of this congregation? Yes, and we need more details. We need to make it richer and deeper, and we need to talk about two key pieces that are missing: health and financial well-being. But the Vision 2020 folks thought of this. Enter the powerful set of our strategic directions. And I wonder how many non-board members, so board members, don't raise your hands, among us, know about our strategic directions. A couple of folks. All right. The first is to reach out and engage persons along the spectrum of faithful relationships, because healthy churches engage people of all ages and connect people of all ages together by creating an environment where everyone feels and is welcomed, where we're able to work together to grow each other into being the best people and the best community that's possible. Number 2 is to focus our social justice work so we can increase its impact. And anyone who's watched Morgan Spurlock's documentary, Super Size Me, knows that more is not better. Over the course of 30 days, Spurlock agreed to supersize all of his meals at McDonald's, resulting in high cholesterol, I think prediabetes, and a host of other health issues. But as Reverend Nancy McDonald Ladd said last week, we can do just better as a liberal religious community than knowing we shouldn't eat at McDonald's. Successful churches engage in programming that is focused in just a couple of areas, but to run deeply in these areas in terms of partnerships and relationships inside the walls of this community and beyond this community in the county, the state, the nation, the world. The goal here is laser focus, not diffuse light. Number 3 is to offer a range of worship experiences that speak to a changing population. Multicultural, multiracial families are the present of Montgomery County. We are one of the most diverse counties in the nation. And multicultural, multiracial families are the future of this nation. Furthermore, Pew Research indicates a growing number of people identifying as unchurched or spiritual but not religious. They're sometimes referred to as cultural creatives. But our association has been historically predominantly white, middle, and upper class. If UU congregations, if the structure of our services and our culture remains radically Protestant, even though some of the elements may shift to make space for reason and experience over Scripture, these changes are not enough. To be a healthy church living into beloved community, the one we're dreaming of, we must continue to push the envelope on worship and all programming, welcoming inclusivity of all ages, all genders, all abilities, all theologies, and more. But we must also know that the pulpit can only change as quickly as the pews allow. This is a pretty big dream we're living into, but it takes all of us to make the change. Number 4, transform our spaces to better nurture community. This chancel is not acceptable. It's not accessible. Does it convey welcome to everyone? Now, our capital campaign is aimed at helping us transform our spaces in a way that brings community together so everyone knows that there's a place for them here, whether it is on the chancel or in a classroom. We're going to bring the upstairs and downstairs together. And maybe as we think about reframing our spaces, particularly in light of what happened today with the flooding, right? Resilience isn't just about going back to where you were. It's about thinking about where you can be and trying to build for that, to build for something better. Can we be more green? What if we bounce back to being more futuristic in our thinking? The possibilities are only limited by our imaginations. The next step is to increase our sense of deserving. We bring into religious community our best and our most challenged selves, our hopes, our fears, our skills, our flaws, our limits on what we think is possible. And these limits are also often set by deep-seated fears, maybe even on what we've been told is possible for us. Pew Research supports the decline of church as we've all known it. But the thing is, just because the way we used to do church doesn't work anymore doesn't mean there isn't a place for religious community. We need each other to survive. Over the past 2 weeks, we've been visited by 2 guest preachers, the Reverend David Miller and the Reverend Nancy McDonald Loud, and both of them have challenged us in different ways to rethink how we do church, to rethink our faith, to rethink our lived theology. But first, we have to believe that we deserve to be a part of that future and increase our capacity to change so we can step boldly, as Gene Roddenberry said, into the unknown. Step 4 is befriending your fear. Each of us has beautiful seeds that we can plant. Something that is meant to provide beauty for others, maybe even generations to come if we tend and nurture those plants carefully, give them the conditions they need, and remove weeds when they grow. But fear can contaminate the soil of our dreams if we let it. Fear can tell us that we're not enough, that if we fail, we'll be hurt, or we'll be shamed, or we'll destroy everything. Fear whispers in our ear like a friend that if we were to change, we could be left behind, or we could leave others behind. Fear tells us we need to think small to survive. Fear tells us if we don't shrink, we will suffer, and no one wants to feel pain. But here's the thing. Suffering is inevitable. Bad things are going to happen whether you're reaching for your dreams or not. So why not reach for your dreams? Why not commit to staying in community and going for it? Embracing joy along the way, because joy is essential. As the choir sang, we must make a place for joy. Joy continues to nourish us in community. When we celebrate it, it helps us to do courageous, risk-taking work as a community. It supports us as we come together as community to process and make meaning of suffering and discomfort. Doing this, embracing of joy, is a recipe for befriending fear and living a more transformative life. And when we do this, when we befriend joy, when we lean into it, when we lean on each other, when we make meaning together as a community, we compost our fears and make that soil ready to grow beautiful dreams. Number 5 is activating the law of circulation through giving. We have room in our strategic directions for a 5th that addresses giving in a way that transforms the traditional Protestant culture of lack to one of abundance. Mary often talks about how ridiculous it is to stand in front of a wood stove and say, "Give me heat," if you haven't first given it wood. we need to put our name to the check, slide it under the glass, and receive the abundance. Transformational giving helps us get there. And you know, our generosity campaign starts today. There's tables in the lounge. It's free donuts if you give your pledge today. They're calling it dollars for donuts. They're so creative. And the thing is, I'm going to invite you into an experiment this year. I'm going to invite you to help build a dream. I want to invite you to make Cedar Lane your primary source of giving for this year. Sorry, NPR, but we're going to give it a try. And this is the invitation, and here's why. Because there are generations that need us. We want to reach the spiritual but not religious who don't know that there's a home here. We have space in our hearts and in our pews for the multicultural, multi-religious families who don't have another place. But we got to build it. We have to plant those trees. Now, the next steps that help us navigate the gap, which is the scary place that exists between what we dream of bringing into being and where we are now. So I'm going to speed through these steps, but they're all super important because we can get caught in this gap. The Reverend MacDonald Ladd shared something that equates this gap to the desert in Exodus. It's a place we might need to learn to navigate for a while, a place not all of us will make it out of because Moses didn't make it to the promised land. The grandfather didn't get to enjoy the fruit of those mangoes, but I ask you, who do you want to be? Do you want to be asleep for 20 years? Or do you want to be the person that is planting a grove and nourishing it and loving on it for future generations to thrive? We got to change our perceptions to do this work because the fact of the matter is we can't shrink our ways to greatness. We got to get creative. Our fundraising team, tune in. They have some neat fundraisers coming this year, but I also wonder, what can we dream up together? Some congregations have sold plots of their land for community gardens. Some have created tiny eco-friendly malls with affordable housing on one level and shopping centers on the other. I mean, again, we are limited only by our imaginations. Number 7 is we must set ourselves free through the practice of forgiveness. And woo-wee, this is a biggie, as individuals and as a community, because as change begins to occur, all kinds of things happen. We get scared. We get worried. Some of us even might feel like we want to leave. And the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd calls out that at times like these, we sometimes find ourselves engaging in fake fights. Fake fights are a way of taking our internal thermostat when things start to get too good or too exciting and cooling them off. This happens as individuals and it happens as communities. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because all seeds, given the right conditions, will ultimately burst through their shells. Number 8 is to listen to that still small voice, and we can do that through shared worship, through practices that we engage in home that nourish our spirits, and through spiritual work here together, through silence, through visioning, and more. We can create support systems, number 9, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially, through programming here in the congregation, and number 10, in order to write a new operating system for ourselves and this church. We're going to have to work on it. I mean, Lord save us from monoculture, because we are not going for that, right? But there are some things that can be standard, like excitement and vision. And I will tell you, I've been to Agape, which is a 9,000 member congregation on the West Coast, and you feel the excitement. From the second you pull into the parking lot, someone's waving at you, people hug you. You feel like a rock star through your whole experience at Agape. And I mean, what might that be like if we were so excited about the good news of Cedar Lane that it vibrated within these walls and throughout the community? Number 11 means turning failure from a stumbling block to a stepping stone. Fear of failure is scary stuff. Shame researcher, storyteller Brené Brown's work on courage and vulnerability is key in this step. Brené talks about how she spoke to a group of military leaders and asked them to give her an example of where they'd engaged in courage without struggle, uncertainty, emotional exposure, or risk, which is basically, she says, the definition of vulnerability. After a while, someone responded and said, "I've been on 3 tours, ma'am, and I've never seen that happen. Courage is only present in times of vulnerability and risk." Brené implores us all to get used to rumbling with vulnerability because she states people who are more courageous up front know how to rise after failure. So as we engage in this process, as we rumble together, programs that we try might not work. Some might have to end. Some might be fabulous successes, and we are going to celebrate that joy as we make meaning of all other experiences that we might have, but we will not get caught in shame spirals. And after some undetermined period of time, with love and consistency and our work together, we're going to see sustained appearances of beloved community. And we're going to harvest our dream, which is number 12. So I ask you, do you want to be the person who sleeps for 20 years? Or do you want to be the seed planter? Do you want to be the seed planter? Yes. All right. Then I invite you to put your name to the dream. Put your name to the dream over and over and over again. Lean on each other as a community, and let's harvest this dream together. The world needs us to harvest this dream. May it be so. Amen. And blessed be. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment.
And spirits into faith set freedom fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of that flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still as witness to the life of liberty. And the fire of commitment sets our minds full of bliss. When our hunger and our passion keep us on our way, when we live with the assurance of the thing that
May your promises find fulfillment so that the future of the world may truly begin, brighter and stronger, more loving and inclusive than we have ever known it. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.